welcome. As I said, we're going to, Jane and I will be taking turns here. We're excited to be presenting at GIJN. Here's what we're going to be covering today. First, we're going to talk about sort of some of the basics of mis and disinformation, what makes them spread, some of the life cycle of manipulation of media that Jane will talk about. And then Jane is going to walk you through verifying images and video. I'm going to show you how to investigate social media accounts. Jane will show you how to monitor chat apps like Telegram and WhatsApp. And then I'm going to talk about how you take these individual pieces where, there could be accounts spreading mis or disinformation, they could be producing images or video, doing it on chat apps, how you might connect them all together into a network and sort of attribute who might be behind it. And then we will hopefully have some more time for questions and comments. So thank you everybody for being here. Just two resources we're going to point you to. On the left is it's a free book, the Verification Handbook for Disinformation and Media Manipulation. This is, as I said, a free book. It's online. We have versions in German, Italian, I believe Arabic as well, and maybe a couple other languages I might be forgetting. And then on the right is a link to a Google Doc of kind of tools and resources. And so those links are all here, including a link to these slides. So you can download it from the files section on the conference website, or you can go to bit.ly/GIJN disinfo. So that's where the slides are. And Jane will pop that into the chat for you so that you can click on it there, as well as the other links. And those will be up and available for you forever. So if you miss something, don't worry about it. You'll have access to the slides forever. All right, so let's talk a little bit about mis and disinformation. This is kind of a breakdown of the different types of things that you might see. Because there isn't just one type of misinformation or disinformation. Misinformation typically is false or misleading content that is being unintentionally spread. People who are well-meaning, who think the information is reliable, spread it, and that's misinformation. Disinformation is the creation or the spreading of false or misleading information with the intent to do that. So that's sort of the difference between the two terms. And here we can see there's lots of different types that you might see. The one that I'll highlight is in the middle, false context. So this is where you might have, for example, a real photo, but someone shares it and they say, oh, this image was taken, this morning in Damascus or something like that. When in fact, if you search it, maybe the photo is from Gaza from 3 years ago. And we're going to show you how to do that kind of reverse image search with some great tools. But it's just important to know that really the most common type of mis and disinformation is false context, something that is real, that has been taken out of its original and accurate context and put into a new one that is false or misleading. So it's good to keep in mind that element of nuance, that it's not all the same, and the intent can change. Some people are well-meaning, some people actually have the intent to do harm. The other thing that's really important, and this is actually from a chapter in the Verification Handbook, is that a lot of the content that is out there that qualifies as mis or disinformation is not necessarily trying to be news. It's not, fake news. And it's often visual. It's memes or videos. Or it could be, a certain element of coordinated behavior to share something that's true, but to share it in an inauthentic way, to make it seem like it's more popular than it is. And again, a lot of it isn't 100% false. A lot of it is something that's actually genuine, but used out of context. And so when you're thinking about digging into or monitoring misinformation and disinformation, you need to have that context in mind, because if you're only looking for things that are 100% false, if you're only looking for things that claim to be news, you're going to miss most of what is actually out there. And then, a last point here is just the stuff that works really well again, tends to be rooted in reality. It tends to affect people in an emotional way. They see the image, they read the text, they get really angry, or it makes them, it affirms something that they already believe, which is the next point there, that a lot of successful stuff appeals to existing beliefs and bias, because we are more likely to share and believe something that way. It exploits networks, meaning social networks, messaging app groups, that kind of thing. And again, it is often visual. It is often not a full article that is 100% false. It is often a single image, maybe with text put on it as a meme, and meant to be easily shared and spread. And so that's some of the context that you want to keep in mind as you're trying to look for this stuff, and also to put it in your head of, what somebody who is deliberately creating and spreading disinformation, what they might be doing to kind of put it together to make it spread and to make it be successful. And now I'm going to pass it to Jane. So let me actually stop sharing and let Jane take over and share and walk you through the next bit.
Yes, hi. So good to see everybody here. One thing that's important to highlight about disinformation is that even though focusing on the false information and debunking it is incredibly important, that's only one part of the process that disinformation goes through. So my colleagues here at Harvard University developed something they call media manipulation. It's important for us to understand that just as campaigns have stages where they're being planned and where they spread on social media, which is where we might encounter them, responses by journalists also play into how these campaigns play out. And of course, many campaigns don't go away just because we've debunked them. They adjust and continue to circulate. So I'm going to take you through verifying images and videos. And some of the key things you should be asking are you looking at an original piece of content, at an original image or video? This is important because we see images and videos taken out of context and circulated, like Craig mentioned, years after they were originally published. So trying to find the original piece of content can very frequently help us in verifying or debunking it. It's also important to ask who captured the content and when. This is so that we can find other pieces of images or video if we're able to, as well as think about the motivation of the person who was posting these images or videos. And finally, trying to figure out where the image or video was captured could help us geolocate it or verify or debunk it. So for example, if somebody says that an image or a video was captured in Canada, in Montreal, for example, and you see palm trees in the background, that's a pretty good indicator that the image was not captured in Montreal, which is a very cold place. Our best tool for verifying images and videos is the vVerify Chrome plugin, which you can download at the link here. And I think Craig will drop that into the chat for you. It's a bit of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to verifying online media. And even though I'm going to be showing you just 2 of its functions, it has many, many more. So I could not recommend this plugin enough. It's absolutely essential for our work. One of the key things with image search is to go beyond Google, which the vVerify search extension allows you to do. If you install it, and unfortunately it's only available in the Chrome browser. But if you install it, you'll immediately get options for the different search engines that you can try. This is a well-known meme about the coronavirus that falsely claims that gargling with warm water and salt will eliminate the virus. So let's compare what it looks like across different search engines. So Google tends to get really fixated on what it thinks it's showing you, but can sometimes be pretty useful. As you can see, it's showing here originally that it thinks the image is showing people eating salt and vinegar chips, which is not true. And we can adjust those key terms to get a more precise search. So Google is almost always a first stop, but it's only useful in some situations. Yandex, which is the Russian search engine, is also generally quite useful. As you can see, it found this meme in many different languages and on many different platforms. It also gives us the text on the meme and allows us to search by image size. A good rule of thumb is that the larger the image, the more likely it is it's the original. Yandex also allows us to search for a part of an image, expanding our search. And usually if you have something like a logo or a patch on somebody's clothing, Yandex could be really good with that because of this feature, allowing you to select a part of a photo. It's also quite good with facial recognition, and it's one of the best search engines when it comes to facial recognition. Bing has a reputation for being a pretty useless search engine, but it can be useful. It can pick up things that Google and Yandex don't show. It also gives us the full text of an image, and like the other search engines, walks us through the related content. Just like Yandex, it allows us to crop a part of an image and search for that, which again, with things like logos or group photos, small details and images that you're wanting to find out more information about, this feature is incredibly useful. Finally, I want to walk you through the TinEye search engine, which is a search engine that specializes in image search only. It's the only search engine that allows us to sort images by oldest and newest. Oldest, of course, means it's more likely we can understand where the image came from. Here it's giving us stock image results that we did not see on other websites. And sorting by newest, of course, allows us to understand whether the image that we're looking at is still in circulation. Just like Yandex, it allows us to sort by image size, which can be really helpful in trying to find the original image. But we do need to be careful with TinEye, especially newer images and newer videos. It will struggle with. It doesn't always give results. But for anything that you think might be a stock image, this is a very, very useful search engine. Now, reverse image searching photos is one thing, but videos can be a little bit more tricky. And the vVerify search extension, Chrome extension, can help with that as well. So, for example, when Qasem Soleimani was killed in January 2020, I believe on January 3rd, 2020, there were endless videos circulating claiming to be from the scene of the attack. This video surfaced a few days later. And as we can see, for a video addressing breaking news, it has pretty significant engagement. It's got about 200,000 views. It's got almost 1,000 retweets. At the time, a lot of fake videos and fake images ended up in real news reports, which shows why it's important for us to verify them before we report on them. So if you open the V-Verify search extension, which is just click on the button in Chrome at the top right, you'll be able to click on the video analysis option. And that's where you can drop in a YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter link. It will give you a lot of information about what you've just dropped in. So immediately we see the exact time that this was posted, as well as the method, which is Twitter for iPhone. We see a lot of information about the account itself. And the one that I want to bring your attention to is the created date in the bottom right. So whereas on Twitter proper, you'll see a create date, something like September 2020, the Invid V-Verify Chrome extension will give you the exact date and time. This can be really helpful in understanding whether an account was freshly created to spread this fake content. It will also break the video down to thumbnails, which can then be reverse image searched. So in this case, we can just click Google Image Reverse Search. And even though the top results won't be very useful, if we keep clicking, on the second page, we will get a result showing that this video was posted on September 15th, 2019, which is before the January assassination. This already, again, if we click through, we see that same date. This already shows us that this video was posted before the assassination and therefore cannot be part of that breaking news event. As I said, the Invid V-Verify tool has a lot of different options. One really useful one is Twitter analysis. So if you give it a hashtag or a key term, as well as a time limit, you're going to be able to see what the conversation about that hashtag or key term is like. And you're also going to be able to break it down to things like most active users, most retweeted users, and most mentioned accounts. This is really useful if you want to understand who wants to drive that conversation forward. I will say that this is an advanced feature. This is a free tool, and you can sign up to the advanced portion of it easily, but use your professional email. This is done so that creators of the tool can verify who's using it to avoid bad actors taking advantage of it. So once again, just click on that login button in the top right and select the register button, but use your professional email. It will not work if you use your personal email. So watch out for that. And that's it for me. It seems like Craig's been answering a lot of questions in the chat. Craig, is there anything that I should specifically address before we move forward?
No, I think we're good.
All right, wonderful. Then I'll let you take over.
Okay. All right, so folks, we're going to dig into investigating social media accounts now. Obviously, in order to spread mis and disinformation, you need to have something that it comes from, whether that is a Twitter account, could be, in a Telegram channel, as we'll see with Jane in the next session, or could be a Facebook page or something else. So when we're looking into social media accounts, we want to start, before we use any tools, it's really about kind of our mind and what we're thinking about looking for. So when we encounter an account, we want to think about, who are they claiming to be? What do they say about themselves? A lot of platforms have verified accounts, which means that the platform believes this to be the account belonging to the person that is, is listed there, usually a politician, a celebrity. That doesn't mean what they share, of course, is 100% accurate, but it means that there's a good chance it's really coming from that person or someone working with them. Do they tell you about location? And then from there, you really want to think about analyzing the network. So on Twitter, you can follow people and people can follow you. And that's often really useful information. Who is following an account and who do they follow? Who do they talk to? You know, who do they have conversations with? What kind of content are they sharing or retweeting? And you can apply that to any platform. You know, what are they interacting with? And what does that tell you about who they say they are and then the kind of content they're putting out? Sometimes there is a bit of a disconnect or conflict between who they claim to be and then the kind of content you're seeing from the account. And those are the kinds of things that you want to be watching for. The other thing is, if you're interested in an account on one platform, you shouldn't only pay attention to that one platform. You should try to find the entire social media and online footprint for that person, which means seeing if they have social media accounts on other social media platforms. And in a minute, I'm going to show you a really great free tool that helps speed up that process for you. Obviously, as I put here on the slide, one thing you could do is, look at what their username is. I often use, Craig Silverman, all one word, on social media platforms. And you could put that username in quotes and simply start searching on that. But there are, some more efficient ways of doing that I'll show you in a moment. Let's kind of take as an example here our friend Billy Murphy. So, if we were to analyze this account and think about the things we wanted to look at, and one note is that ignore the fact that some of the Twitter words are in German. When Jane archived this account, the Wayback Machine just happened to archive the German version of it, so ignore that. But with Billy Murphy, again, we can look at, okay, we've got a photo. We could reverse image search that photo, right, to see where else it is and if we can find maybe other profiles using it. He's got a bio. He tells us freelance journalist for North Dakota, adventurous risk taker, says he's in North Dakota. And we can see there, August 2019 is when he joined Twitter with this account. And then, of course, there's also the content. He says he's a freelance journalist for North Dakota, which if you're an English speaker, that's kind of an awkward way of writing that. And so if he's actually a journalist and he's using such poor grammar, that's a little bit puzzling. That's the kind of thing you may want to say, well, that doesn't really make sense because you're not a journalist for North Dakota, you're a journalist in North Dakota. And it's also interesting that as a journalist in North Dakota, he's, tweeting a lot about foreign affairs and foreign relations. And we can see he also retweeted an account called The Foreign Code. And all of that is really helpful information to start taking in as we analyze the account, right? Now, if we're going to dig deeper on Twitter accounts, I'm going to show you one tool in a second, but just here's some basic guidelines. We want to reverse image search the photo using InVid. Great way to do that, the WeVerify extension. Look at their bio, their network. And then also just one tip is when you look at a Twitter account, you'll see the content that they're sharing by default, but there's a button where you can click on, tweets and replies, where you can see the conversations that they might be having. And that can be really helpful because sometimes accounts are actually, replying to other accounts, maybe with mis and disinformation. And then on the right-hand side of this slide, I've just suggested a bunch of tools for you that can do different things. And I want to emphasize that you use these tools to help with your analysis. These tools are not, going to give you the answer of whether this is a genuine account or a fake account, whether this is, an account that's part of an information operation or not. But they will hopefully give you data to help you in your analysis. And I do want to note that the third group of tools there, Batometer and Bot Sentinel.com. So these will analyze an account and they will give you a rating of whether they think they are automated, whether they think they are bots, meaning not being controlled by a human, but software to help them tweet and interact. And I just want to say that, again, these are guidelines. You don't write an article saying something is a bot just because it gets a high score from Batometer or botsentinel.com. You have to do additional work, but this may be helpful information to take into account. Another tool that's helpful just for looking at an account and gathering some basic data about it is Twidonomy.com. So there's a free version here. It's going to tell you, how often they tweet, when they tweet, which other accounts they reply to, who do they retweet, who do they talk about. So this is just a great way, again, to get that basic network analysis of who they're talking to, what content they're putting out, and also their behavior. And it can also give you a breakdown of when they tweet. Sometimes, that's going to help you figure out what time zone they're in. So if Billy claims to be in North Dakota, but most of his tweets come out when it's, between 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. in North Dakota, that might be a little bit weird and a little bit suspicious. Now, maybe he's traveling, but if that's consistent, that's going to be something that's kind of puzzling to you, right? Okay, so I had mentioned that I was going to show you a tool to kind of search a username and make it more efficient. So this is the tool. It's called Whatsmyname App. And you basically can take a username here. I put in Craig Silverman, and it's going to search over more than 270 different online services and save you tons of time in seeing if this username is used elsewhere. So here's, a basic look at the results that I got for me. So you can see there, it found the username Craig Silverman on 26 different services. So chess.com, MyFitnessPal, Product Hunt, About.me. But it searched about 273 of them, which is amazing, right? And you can see some of these are very niche sites. Now, the important thing to note here is that just because someone has the username Craig Silverman doesn't mean it's me. Other people can use the same username. Like, I don't think chess.com is me, but I think Elo.com is me. I don't think Behance is me, but I think Keybase is me. And so the only way for you to actually do the verification of this is to visit all of these links and start to see. And what's really helpful is you can actually, if you see on the right-hand side there, you can download the list of accounts they found and start to make notes in a spreadsheet if you want it. So that's a really helpful and efficient way to start getting someone's footprint online as you try to dig into an account. And again, accounts are one of the core things that are important for spreading mis and disinformation, because it needs to come from somewhere, and to get viral traction, you want as many accounts and big accounts sharing it as possible. Okay, so last little bit here on accounts is just on Facebook. It's a different process when we're looking at Facebook pages or we're looking at Facebook accounts. And depending on what country you're in, maybe Twitter is influential and important, maybe Facebook is, maybe it's neither of these and it's some other services, but the principles really apply. And you need to figure out what is relevant for which service you're looking at. But just to note on pages, getting a sense of the amount of audience it has, the likes and followers, how much engagement, the content it gets, and also what that content is. Is it sharing content from the same URL over and over again? Well, maybe that's because the person who runs the page also runs that website, right? Facebook can also be really helpful in helping you connect that page to others, because it has a kind of related or suggested pages box where it's saying, hey, if you like this page, maybe you should like or visit these ones. And honestly, sometimes you'll find that those pages are run by the same people or a part of the same kind of operation. The most important two things I will note to you is, number one, there is a tab for reviews and a tab for community on most pages. Always look at those tabs, because especially if they're using false claims for products or something like that, you might see unhappy customers, or you might see people actually calling it out and saying, hey, this page is unreliable, it's sharing false information all the time. So reviews tab, community tab, really important. The last one is that there is a transparency box. So my second bullet there, the transparency box If you click on that, it's going to show you potentially the location where the managers of that page are. So does the page claim to be in one country, but the managers are another? And it will show you when the page was created and if it has changed its name over time. Really, really helpful things. And then for accounts, it's similar kind of analysis with Twitter, but I did mention there, the whoposted.what.com tool can be helpful. And just as a tip, if you're looking at an account and you're really interested in it, but they don't have a lot of content on it, maybe they've locked it down. If they have their friends list that's public, look for people with the same last name, because maybe they're related and maybe that person has more stuff on their page. Maybe they've got tagged photos of the person you're actually interested in. So think about moving to the side and finding other people close to them and looking at their accounts. All right, so that's the social media accounts section. Jane, do we have anything here that you want me to address before we head on into chat apps?
I think we're all good so far. We do have one question about who posted what, because it can be a little bit tricky to use. And maybe if we have time at the end, we can walk our viewers through it a little bit more, because yes, it can be a little bit tricky at times.
Yeah, it can. And you often need to get the ID. There's a unique ID for accounts on Facebook. And so there are tools that you can use. And actually, why don't we do this, Jane? Why don't I stop sharing? You take over for monitoring chat apps, and I'm going to drop a link or two to sites that will help you get an account's Facebook ID to help them with who posted what. Does that sound good?
That sounds good. And we also have another question about, is there a way to archive Facebook pages? Unfortunately, Facebook has changed the way you're able to view content and is now asking you to be logged in at all times, which has stopped our ability to archive them using publicly available archive tools. Facebook famously not a very transparent organization, and unfortunately, this is one of the ways that this is reflected. Okay, let's move on to chat apps. I think we're making pretty good time here, but I'll try to talk a little bit faster. Thank you to our wonderful interpreters for keeping up with us. So chat apps are increasingly important when it comes to verification and how fake content spreads. We see Telegram and WhatsApp being particularly ripe with misuse, depending on where you are in the world. And before we get started in investigating messaging apps, it's important for us to understand that with many of them, there's an expectation of privacy, and we need to learn our organization's policies or develop those new policies, have our conversations with editors when it comes to respecting that privacy. This is very different from a public Twitter profile or a public Facebook profile where somebody is consciously putting information into the public. Chat apps, again, have that expectation of privacy, and we need to be careful when we report on that. Because of how private these tools are, we're also quite limited in what we can do. And one way we can get around the limitations is by soliciting tips from our readers. Crowdsourcing can be really effective. For example, the Comprova project in Brazil saw a few different newsrooms come together and advertise the same WhatsApp number for their readers. The readers then sent in fake information that the newsrooms could verify or debunk. So don't discount the power of soliciting tips from readers as part of your investigation's efforts. As well, ongoing monitoring can be much more useful than finding information in the moment. So if you join particularly Telegram channels, knowing what they are, seeing them talk about the information environment, seeing their chatter, in the moment can prepare you for possible disinformation campaigns in the future. And of course, once again, be careful with whose names and identifying information you publish. If they're not participating in a disinformation campaign, there's no reason for you to include their name or identifying information in your story. And be sure to redact any names and phone numbers from screenshots that you're posting in your stories as well. WhatsApp is particularly difficult, but one of its features includes public groups where creators can share a link for everybody to join. This is the simplest thing for us to find, and that's what we'll focus on with WhatsApp. A handy picture here on the right from SimilarWeb, I believe, showing just how important messaging apps are to the global information environment. So one of the best ways for us to search for WhatsApp groups that we might want to join is by going to Google, Facebook, or Twitter. Now, this is probably the most complicated Google advanced search that I will show you, but let me explain what it's doing. So here we're telling Google, look on the website facebook.com. The search operator site : essentially narrows down your results to the website that you tell Google to look at. And then we're inputting the URL chat.whatsapp.com. The reason why we're including this URL is because if somebody is sharing an invite, this is the format that it will be in. After that, include any key terms that might be interesting to you. But I would urge you to be general here because essentially when people ask new participants to join a group, they're going to be using general terms, or group names tend to be general terms. And here with the search, for example, we could see that there's a few different Facebook groups and Facebook posts, Facebook communities that invited participants to their climate-focused WhatsApp groups. So if you were monitoring the information environment around the recent climate talks in Glasgow, for example, this could be a useful series of groups for you to join. You could also do that on Facebook proper, but it will show you very different results. So it's a good idea to do this across platforms. So here we see, for example, Edinburgh, we see climate justice conversations, again, things that would be useful to you if you're monitoring the climate talks. And that is very different from Twitter, where once again, you can do a very similar search in its syntax and get even more diverse WhatsApp groups. So this example was for climate, but include any key terms that are useful to you. Telegram is a much more open platform, and it's much easier to monitor than WhatsApp is. Telegram is broken down into a few different features. The first is a channel, which is a one-way broadcast similar to Twitter. This is something that, particularly in the US context, is the most popular, I would say. But also in the EU context as well. And the channel on the right is what that looks like. A group is a multi-way communication. So sometimes you see massive groups talking to one another on Telegram. And that's most similar to Facebook groups. And then, of course, it's also a texting service. So your classic standard SMS service that WhatsApp would also provide. If you have the Telegram desktop app, you already have a lot of search features available to you. So you can search within channels, for example, by clicking on the magnifying glass on the right. And you can limit when you want your conversations to be by clicking on the calendar within the search bar. This is really helpful if you think that somebody was talking about a piece of disinformation and you want to narrow down when it happened. And you're also able to export channel history, even if you've recently joined. So if you just joined a brand new channel and you want to download everything that they've ever talked about, make sure you have the desktop app. Click on the 3 dots and the export channel history will work very beautifully for you. I will also add that if you're in a channel or a conversation that has since been deleted, so for example, if a user has left, you can still download that history and that chat will be available to you until you leave it, which is really fantastic for archiving purposes. If you do not see that option, it's possible that you do not have the right version of the Telegram app. It's very important to download the Telegram app from the website rather than the Mac OS store. The website gives you the export function, the Mac OS store does not. So make sure to go to the Telegram website and download it from there. One of the most useful channel search and analytics tools that we have is tgstat.com. And as Craig said, this will not help you debunk a specific channel or write that this channel is run by fake operators, but it will allow you to learn more information as well as understand who this channel is engaging with. So if you punch in a username that is relevant to your work into TGStat, or a channel name rather, sorry, into TGStat, you're able to get analytics up to 90 days going back. Sorry, I was about to sneeze, but we did it. So you're able to see if the channel got a big influx of subscribers, or if there was a day when its content was the most popular. What's really important and is one of the key functions for me is you're able to see what other channels this channel is engaging in. This can very quickly give us an idea of the type of content we're looking for. So for example, here we're looking at a US far-right organization called the Proud Boys, and we can see that it's engaging with other similar far-right channels. From here, I would follow all of these channels so that I better understand what they're talking about and how they intersect. You can also look at stats using another tool called telemeter.io. It's similarly useful in understanding which channels are popular and which channels are not. If you're trying to discover channels, TGStat.ru is great, but you can also try tlgrm.eu or telegram.eu. This will not have the more fringe channels like conspiracy-focused channels, but it's always good to try a few different search engines, as we know. And finally, one of the most powerful tools that we have is called Telegago, which is a custom search engine focused on Telegram specifically. It allows you to cycle through a few different options. Yes, you can look at different channels, but you can also look at public messaging and contacts. If you know a username or if you have a key term that you think might be useful to you, you can also use a Google search operator to find them. So once again, we're using the site:/search operator, which tells Google to look within a certain website. But this time we're putting in t.me. T.me is the format that Telegram invites are shared in. So if you put site:/t.me, and then put any key terms, and these can be in any language, not just English, the key terms. But if you put any key terms or a username that you know, you will find that channel. As Craig mentioned, if you have somebody's username, then you can snowball pretty quickly for the information that you find. This is a good way to figure out if somebody has a Telegram channel that you can contact with or text them at. So if you just put in a username there, you will be able to you might be able to contact a person that you're investigating. So that's it for me. And we've got a little bit of time left. So Craig will show you how to connect networks together. But before that, Craig, any burning questions in the chat?
No, I think we're good. And just a note to everyone, I originally dropped in a tool to look up a Facebook ID, which can help you in using whopostedwhat.com. But pardon me, the tool I posted seems to not be working so well today. So I have just put in a new one that is working. If you want to get a Facebook ID, please use that most recent one I shared. And all right, let's bring it home here with our last module, where now we've talked about images and video. We've talked about the accounts that might be sharing them. We've talked about the channels and groups in messaging apps that might also be places where this stuff is spreading. And then the other thing that we really want to think about is how we can connect different pieces together, how we can figure out if a bunch of accounts do seem to be working together and do seem to be all, perhaps run by the same people or the same entity. And so some people, in a fancy way, they call this network analysis, and there are network analysis tools out there like Gephi and others. But I'm going to really focus less on tools and more on just kind of the indicators, the things that you want to start to look for to build your case that things are connected. So that's kind of the idea of what we're going to go through now. And when we think about doing this kind of work, here are some fundamentals that I want you to keep in mind. Okay, so there's a researcher, Camille Lefrançois, who was at Graphica. And she talks about ABC, actors, behavior, content. Those are the three elements that you kind of want to connect together. The actors, meaning accounts, the content, what is being shared, and the behavior. Are they doing the same things? How do they overlap and connect? One of the key things about doing this work in general is that you can't really just parachute in and suddenly uncover a network. The thing that Jane and I do, and that other people working in this area do, is that you find the areas you're interested in and you start to collect and monitor over time. So you might build Twitter lists of accounts you're watching, Facebook pages. You might be monitoring lots of Telegram channels and WhatsApp groups. And so you need to monitor over time because that helps you see patterns, okay? And then you want to think about, again, the actors or accounts. What are they doing? What are they spreading? What is the content that's being pushed out there? Can you start with one piece of content, one article, one tweet, one image? And can you build on that and find out where else it is online and start to put those connections together? Just like we talked about with social media accounts, don't just get stuck on one platform. Disinformation campaigns are often cross-platform. They often spread across different places. So don't get caught with tunnel vision. And the other last 2 points here are probably the most important. Number one is, if you are going in your reporting to say this person or this country or this organization is behind all of these accounts, is behind this operation, you need to make sure you build a really strong case. Just like you can't call something a bot just because an automated tool told you it's a bot. You can't go and accuse someone of being behind an operation unless you have got really strong evidence. One of the ways that people doing this work really go wrong is they make attribution and they make accusations without having the basis to back it up. So be cautious, gather your evidence, stack it until you have a high level of confidence. And then the last thing is that we have showed you a lot of tools in this workshop. This work is not about tools. This work is about your mindset and how you think and approach this stuff, how you look at accounts, how you think about content, how you then might connect things together. So the tools can help you. Maybe they help speed things up. Maybe they help get data to speed and make your analysis easier. They do not make the decision for you. Okay, traditional reporting, developing sources, doing all of that traditional verification work, it's all really important. Okay, so let's talk about some of these indicators that we might want to be looking for to try and connect things together. So a really simple one is, what about accounts that are amplifying the same content or amplifying each other, right? So here I've got a bunch of retweets and some likes on a tweet. And the tweet itself doesn't really matter. It's just a silly reply, but it happened to be a reply that I was included on. And so what I noticed was when I was tagged in this reply that, it got a surprising amount of engagement for such a simple, unimportant reply. And it got it really fast. And it made me kind of wonder, I was like, why are all of these accounts retweeting and liking somebody who has just tweeted, ha, 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 indeed? Like, is this person really influential? Do they have a lot of fans? And I wasn't familiar with them. So it just made me a little bit curious because it seemed to me that these accounts were, seemed to maybe be working in coordination in some way. Or maybe, again, this person who sent this tweet was really popular. So what do I do? Well, of course, I look at the accounts. And when I look at two of them, I can see, so these two and every other account that I could see was liking and favoring this tweet, all claim to be kind of working in cybersecurity or, IT areas related to that. And, that was a bit puzzling to me, like all of them in this same area. And so, well, what do I do? Well, one of the things we learned is we can use InVid We Verify to reverse image search, and reverse image searching a profile is really good. And so very quickly I see, wait a second, the accounts, the names on these accounts are not actually the names of the people whose photos these are. So the woman was a lawyer in Austin, Texas, not a cybersecurity student in California. And the guy on the right there was Jesse Palmer, a former American football quarterback, fellow Canadian, and currently a TV host. Trivia, he went to the same high school as my wife, just random stuff that happens on the internet, right? And so I could see, okay, so these are suspicious accounts. And at that point, I'm thinking these are suspicious accounts using stolen photos, potentially all working together to amplify certain content. So I was interested in how big is this network? How many accounts can I sort of throw in the bucket of doing this? And so the beautiful thing I mentioned, about Facebook pages will often recommend other Facebook pages that turn out to be connected. Twitter can do the same thing. When I went to the profile of these accounts and I looked in the who to follow box, it was recommending more accounts to me. And so I was like, thank you, Twitter. I'm going to start adding all of these to a spreadsheet, and I'm going to note, their name, when the account was created, their location. If I reverse image search their photo, do I find that it's a stolen photo? So I'm often running just because of noticing, not any tools, just noticing, there's a weird amount of engagement from these accounts. And suddenly within a few minutes, I can see that there's something genuinely suspicious about it. And so I start building the network out. We've talked about actors, we've talked about behavior. Let's talk about content. So when I looked at the content that these accounts were sharing, they were often sharing and amplifying the exact same stuff. And here's what's great about some of that content. I could see that it was often related to a particular guy, the guy who had sent that seemingly innocent Twitter reply, a guy named James Scott, who worked at the Institute for Critical Infrastructure Technology. This was a think tank in Washington, DC. And so right away I'm thinking, okay, so they seem to be amplifying this guy and his organization. Is it possible that there's a connection between this organization and these accounts? And so I don't know for sure yet, right? But there seems to be an indicator that maybe that is who is benefiting from this and maybe is therefore involved in it in some way. So actors, behavior, content, suddenly we have built up a spreadsheet. I forget how big it got, but it was dozens and dozens of accounts. And as I sat there and looked at my spreadsheet, I could see that a lot of them had similar account creation dates. So November 2017, a lot of them created then. And then some of them in January 2012, February 2017. So just by being systematic and putting all of this stuff into a spreadsheet, I can start just by looking at it to realize, yeah, a bunch of these accounts were created, in the same month or in clusters in different months. And you can see there, I've got a column for profile pic origin. That's where I have actually figured out that they've got a stolen profile photo. So you can see I'm building my evidence and I'm building the network at the same time. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about like a content sharing pattern. And let me show you a tool that can help you with this analysis. So this is the Crowdtangle link checker extension. Crowdtangle is a tool actually owned by Facebook, which is tremendously useful. And you do need to get approved to use that tool, even though it's free. But this Crowdtangle link checker extension is free and available to anyone. Just note that if you are going to install it, which I strongly recommend you do need to have a Facebook account in order to use it, okay? And you are going to be asked to sign in order to use it. Don't be alarmed. It is owned by Facebook. Well, don't be alarmed for concerned that it's pretending to be owned by Facebook. It is owned by Facebook. You can still be alarmed about Facebook. And so in this case, what it enables us to do is take an article like this. So just as a sample article, it's an article with a false claim claiming that this long dead hip hop artist was arrested, years after he's been dead. So we know that this is false, but then we want to think about, okay, so how much engagement, how much spread has this article gotten? That can be difficult to do unless you've got the Crowdtangle link checker extension installed. And so the beautiful thing about it is when you are on a particular web page, and it's better if it's like a specific article page, for example, rather than the homepage of a site, unless it's a small site, you can click on the Crowdtangle extension and it's going to tell you some of the public Facebook pages and the public groups on Facebook where this URL has been shared, the specific URL that you're on. Okay. Now it's not going to show you everything. It's not going to show you individual people who shared the content. It's not going to show you where the content was shared in private groups, but it will give you a sense of where it's being shared. And the thing that always stands out to me, on this one, and by the way, just in the upper right there, I've just highlighted, that's what the little button looks like on your Chrome web browser once you've installed it. So you click on that and then it's going to run its analysis once you've signed in. In this case, what I could see here is that this page DeLorean, as well as Cardi B's page, and this was like years ago before Cardi B was really big, which is like the weird nostalgia thing about this for me. Cardi B's page used to spread 100% false stories because her page was paid to do it, which is just like the crazy thing. But we can see here that the DeLorean page was posting this article over and over and over again. And at the time, DeLorean had 4.8 million fans. So clearly this false article was being promoted with a certain pattern. When you use the Crowdtangle extension, just a last note, it can show you Twitter shares of a specific URL from the past 7 days. So that's super helpful. It's not just for Facebook. It will also show you Instagram data, and it will show you if a URL has been shared on Reddit. So you get Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit information about where a particular URL has been shared. So when we do our content analysis and we want to understand if the content has a sharing pattern to it, we use the Crowdtangle link extension, link checker extension as a great way to do that. All right, so please install that. If all you learned from this session today is that you need to install Invid and you need to install the Crowdtangle link checker extension, I think Jane and I will feel like we've accomplished something today. Okay. All right, last little case study here, and then we'll be happy to take some of your questions. Now, content can also be something for analysis if you're on a website or you're looking at a tweet and you think, how many other people have tweeted this exact thing word for word? Can I find other accounts tweeting the same thing? That's where behavior and content will kind of come together. Or when you're looking at a website, one of the things that I always like to do on a website is look at its about page. And if it has really generic, really general and unoriginal text on its about page, I will often take part of it, put that in quotes, and search it online to see if, you know, it maybe copied that text, or if maybe there are other sites using the same about text. This is really common if you are ever kind of investigating scams. Like this website here was something that I was looking into when I saw an ad on Facebook making a lot of false claims about a face mask that was being sold. So it was a mixture of e-commerce and disinformation to a certain extent. And, you know, this was the site that was selling it. And I wanted to see if there were other sites in the network also kind of selling this. And so when I saw the about page, I thought, I bet you there might be some other sites using this too. So it's really simple. You know, I took one of the sentences and put that in quotes and, you know, shared that. And lo and behold, I did find that there were a bunch of other sites, e-commerce sites with that exact same about us text. Now that doesn't mean 100% that they're all run by the same person, but that again is an indicator. It's the kind of thing that we can follow and try to build more evidence. So, you know, I visited every single one of these sites. I entered their URL and information into a spreadsheet. This is the boring basic work you need to be doing in this area, and built that spreadsheet up over time. And so, yes, you know, I found a bunch of sites that had the same template, that used the same about us text, and in many cases were selling the exact same products. But I was curious, you know, do they also have a Facebook page where they're running ads and trying to promote these products? And are they making other false claims? So the next thing that I want to do to build out the network is I've got a list of sites that are maybe connected. Can I also connect them to Facebook pages? So what I've highlighted here is the search that I did. When you are searching on Google, you can use site : and then the name of the website. So I actually used, in this case, I used Google to search Facebook, which may sound crazy, but it's one of the best ways to search Facebook. So I did site : facebook.com, and then I put in quotes, the URL of that very first store, for example, if you remember, because I wanted to see if there was a Facebook page that was listing that store as, you know, something that it's affiliated with. And, you know, I got lucky on that. So I did find a Facebook page with the same kind of name. And in the about section, it listed the website, comingsoon.com. It listed an email address. And remember, I mentioned you always want to click on the page transparency box. Well, in this case, you know, I could see that when it was created in December of 2019, and one of the page managers was in Malaysia. And I could also see that on the bottom there, it says this page is currently running ads. I could go and view the ads that it was running. And so I did this with every single thing that was in my spreadsheet. And eventually I built up a nice spreadsheet that had Facebook pages, the location of Facebook managers, which you can see was almost always Malaysia, the URL of the store. And then I was able to continue to do more work and figure out that there was one company in Malaysia that was running all of these stores and all of these Facebook pages and making these false claims and selling masks when they were actually banned from being sold on Facebook. And so again, from one ad on one Facebook page, following to the website, searching for some content to find other stores, then using the site : operator to search Facebook, I found Facebook pages. And over time, I was able to actually build this up. And, you know, I went to Facebook with what I'd found. I went to the company with what I had found, and Facebook actually confirmed that, yes, there was this one company behind all of these, and they sent the company a legal letter to tell them to stay off Facebook and tried to ban them. So that's the kind of stuff we do in trying to build out the network: actors, behavior, content, thinking about how stuff connects together, collecting it in spreadsheets to sort of build our case, and trying to put as many pieces and points of connection together as possible to make sure that we can feel confident if we're going to go and point the finger at somebody. So the last thing that I want to note before we take some questions, it looks like there's a lot going on in the chat. It's probably just Jane making fun of me the whole time is probably what's going on. Just the last thing to emphasize before we can take some more questions here is we showed you a lot of tools, but again, this is about your thinking process, your mindset, how you approach looking at accounts and websites and chat groups, how you think about that. And then, yes, how you apply the tools to get the information you need. So keep that as a really big takeaway here. We showed you tools, but we really want to emphasize how important the thinking process and the mindset is. That's how you expose the roots of disinformation, by being careful and strategic and thoughtful about how you're doing this kind of work. Okay, so there's links to a few resources there for you. Jane, what is going on in the chat? What, like, this, are you guys having a party in there that I'm left out of? What's going on?
Yes, we are having a party. Actually, if anybody's watching the chat, you saw that Henk van Es just dropped in, who is teaching a session right after us, who is a hero and a wizard when it comes to online investigations. He did have to go, sorry, Craig, before you finished, but if you're looking for a session to join after hours, his video session is going to be incredible. So please check that out. And Craig, there's a couple of questions here. One is scrolling back up here. How long did it take you to map out that network that you were talking about previously?
Well, so I talked about two of them, right? So there was one with the shady Twitter accounts for the shady think tank.
The website one.
The website one. Okay. Yeah. So that one was a little more complicated, but, you know, I mean, I did that over the course of a few days. It wasn't the only thing I worked on. But when it came to, for example, doing that really tedious work of like visiting every single website that maybe had the same about us text and putting in a spreadsheet, I typically did that at night in front of the TV because it's kind of robotic work. So yeah, it was, you know, it took a few days to put it all together. And then I actually ended up partnering with a journalism organization in Malaysia who helped find, you know, employees working for this company who would speak to us confidentially, who confirmed that, yes, we were running mask ads and yes, they had false claims and that kind of thing. So, you know, so from start to finish, it did take a few weeks to get the story published, but it wasn't the only thing I worked on. And again, it wasn't just the tools and it wasn't just the digital stuff. We also went and tried to find sources inside the company, and we managed to do that. And that was obviously a really great thing to make sure we had confidence about what we were publishing, because the company did actually end up threatening to sue the reporting partner in Malaysia. And, you know, if you're a news organization operating in Malaysia, that's a different calculus than, you know, me working for a news organization operating in the US. But, you know, we felt confident and did the story, and Facebook ended up banning them. So, yeah.
One more question. Is it possible to identify a stranger online with a single picture? Maybe I'll take that one, which is, it would get really, really tricky. You have to be very, very lucky for that to happen to you. You can try the different reverse image search tools that I've shown you earlier. In Craig's spreadsheet, tool list, and Craig, correct me if I'm wrong, there's also some facial recognition tools that you could use. That again, you have to be kind of lucky for them to work. The best thing is try to figure out who else are they engaging with. Are there friends or family you could maybe find out more information about? But from one single picture, it's pretty hard.
Yeah, it is. And actually, the tool I'll drop in is PIM Eyes, which is maybe helpful to people to really dig in on a face. You know, it's one of these weird scenarios where on the one hand, we're really happy that there are tools like PIM Eyes and that Yandex is really good at facial recognition and can help you. On the other hand, you know, it's a bit concerning, isn't it? Thinking about our own privacy. So this is sort of the, you know, the two sides of the coin we deal with. Looks like Jane's going to show you something else here as well.
Oh, sorry, muted. Somebody just asked, is it possible to tell when an image is computer generated? And I want to point you to this website, which face is real, which allows you to compare between a real face and a fake face to train up your eyes a little bit. So usually you're looking for things that are not symmetrical or splotches. With this woman, you see a splotch on the bottom right. We see that her
Jane,
earrings are not
you're
quite
making
right.
you're making the interpreters think about splotch in the language they're in.
I'm very sorry, but I was listening to our Russian interpreters earlier and they're fantastic. But my apologies to the interpreters. But if you click on the About button here, you will get, on the methods maybe, button here, you will get a list of things you should look out for when it comes to fake images. So yes, it is possible to tell, but it is getting harder and harder every day.
All right. Well, okay, last call for questions in the chat because we have just a couple minutes left. Oh, here we go. To what limits, how much can you trust these tools? In the case of content in different languages, and with the current AI, photo manipulation, and the deepfakes, et cetera, says, I feel there are more tools to fake rather than to check. It's true. I mean, I'll say a quick thing and then Jane can say something. I mean, it is, people often refer to it as an arms race in that, the people developing new ways of manipulating content and media, they often have strong incentives. There can be financial gain, there can be political gain in doing that. And then there's also companies who are making tools to do the manipulation because it's useful for games, it's useful for film. And so, there is always that tension, and the reality is tools will come and go, but what matters is your mindset. Again, the tools to analyze whether a photo is generated by artificial intelligence, hopefully they continue to improve. But Jane just talked to you about observational methods. Don't just rely on tools. You have to think about how you and your eyes and your senses can do it.
So for Viber, I have not used it very much except for to talk to my grandpas. So unfortunately, I don't have any tips for Viber. But one thing I will say is there's a series of online investigations workshops that have been part of this conference. So if you missed the Paul Myers workshop a couple of days ago on advanced search, definitely go to that one. We cut that out of our presentation because Paul is a pro. If you missed the New York Times Visual Investigations workshop, go to that one as well. That will be a very good complement to what we taught you today. And as well, Hank's session, which is in a minute, will also be a really great complement to what we taught you today. So all together, the tools and the mindset with those 4 workshops will help you investigate different parts of the same problem. And previously, somebody asked if it's okay to reach out to us for questions and advice. Yes, our emails are at the end of the presentation. So please reach out to us if we can help you in any way.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. So Jane, do you want to take this really quick question? How can we verify fake map and satellite images?
I don't know if I can take that question very quickly.
I mean, I guess a quick thing is compare to like Google Street View to see if it's the same there or from reliable satellite and map sources, I suppose.
Yes, compare, contrast, reverse image search, try to use some of the tools that we already taught you. Thank you to everybody for attending and for your very smart questions. Thank you for our interpreters for being very patient with us. And if you need anything else, you can always find us on the internet. We never log off.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And thank you, GIJN, for having us. There's been great stuff. We're looking forward to taking more in.